From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. First, the headlines. GOP Senator defends Guantanamo Bay Prison as absolutely vital institution. Cair condemns State Department's attempt to whitewash murder of Shireen Abu Akleh, repeats call for FBI probe. Mecca businesses seeing Hajj boom ending pandemic slump. Live art protest in support of Uyghur Muslims to be held in London. Most followed TikToker is a practicing Muslim and Hafiz of Quran. Our top story tonight. Republicans in Congress Tuesday rejected a proposal by their Democratic colleagues that would cut off funding for the U.S. military prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. One GOP senator defended the prison as absolutely vital. Last month, House Democrats advanced proposed legislation to close the 20-year-old prison as part of a larger military spending package. However, congressional Republicans doubted the measure would succeed. Republican Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma, the ranking Republican on the Senate Armed Service Committee, told The Hill no rational person would support that. Christian nationalists are fervent about the possibility of violence in a post-Roe v. Wade era, say experts who study the religious right. The Supreme Court's decision overturning abortion rights has emboldened right-wing extremists, experts say. Such extremists already are preparing for an assault on individual rights and democratic self-governance, says New York Times columnist Catherine Stewart. Stewart has reported on the religious right for more than a decade. She said speakers of the annual Road to Majority Policy Conference, including keynote speaker Donald Trump, explicitly endorsed dominionism. That's the belief that right-thinking Christians have a mandate to take over government and society. The movement's leaders see the end of abortion rights as the start of more personal attacks on individual rights, she notes. Pastor Jane Buckley Farley heard an unexpected sound when recently walking through her Minneapolis church's neighborhood. The music sounded sort of heavenly, she told Al Jazeera Network. Buckley Farley soon realized it was the sound of the adhan, or the Muslim call to prayer. She said the sound echoing amongst all the buildings made her smile. She found it tender and beautiful. Minneapolis recently became the first major U.S. city to allow the adhan year-round after the city council passed a resolution in March. The city is home to thousands of Muslim residents, of whom many are Somali immigrants. The Council on American Islamic Relations Tuesday condemned the State Department's attempt to whitewash and excuse the murder of Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. The nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization repeated its call for the FBI to launch an investigation into her death by Israeli government forces. The State Department said an analysis into the origin of the bullet that killed Abu Akleh was inconclusive. The U.S. Security Coordinator also found gunfire from Israeli Defense Forces positions was likely responsible for Akleh's death. But the coordinator found no reason to believe that this was intentional. Cair Deputy Director Edward Ahmed Mitchell and said racism and politics are at play. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shataya has accused Israel of withholding the bodies of dead Palestinians in Israel's university labs. Shataya termed the Israeli action as a grave violation of human rights and ethics of science at a cabinet meeting Monday. He urged educational institutions worldwide to boycott Israeli universities involved in withholding Palestinian corpses. He also called for pressuring the Israeli government to release the bodies of dead Palestinians. A local Palestinian committee on the retrieval of dead Palestinians said Israel has been withholding 104 Palestinian corpses since 2015. That's in addition to 256 bodies buried in special numbered graves. Mecca businesses see Hajj boom ending pandemic slump. Details after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
Sound Vision has a summer plan for your kids. Keep them busy and having fun. With creative teaching methods, songs, stories, art projects, and more. Amazing teachers and role models. Lessons that build love for Allah. Positive identity as a Muslim. Summer fun has just begun. Learn about animals in the Quran. Arabic vocabulary. Beautiful names of Allah. Science in the Quran. Visit distant Muslim lands. Learn fun facts about the country, the people, and how to cook special dishes, all from the safety and convenience of your home. Visit academy.adamsworld.org for more details. Hurry.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Mr. Speaker, if I decide to wear a turban, or you decide to wear a cross, or he decides to wear a kippah or a skull cap, or she decides to wear a hijab or a burqa, does that mean that it is open season for right honourable members of this House to make derogatory and divisive remarks about our appearance? For those of us who from a young age have had to endure and face up to being called names such as Towelhead or Taliban or coming from Bongo land, we can appreciate full well the hurt and pain felt by already vulnerable Muslim women when they are described as looking like bank robbers and letterboxes. So rather than hide behind sham and whitewash investigations, when will the Prime Minister finally apologise for his derogatory and racist remarks which... Racist remarks, Mr. Speaker, which have led to a spike in hate crime. And given the increasing prevalence of such incidents within his party, when will the Prime Minister finally order an inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party, something which he and his Chancellor promised on national television?
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Assalamu alaikum! Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
Welcome back. It's back to business for vendors like Abdullah Makhlafi, who runs a shop selling prayer mats in Islam's holiest city. Mecca is bracing for its biggest influx of Hajj pilgrims since the coronavirus pandemic began. 2 years of drastic restrictions limited the number of pilgrims who could perform the pilgrimage, leaving empty shops and hotels in the Saudi Arabian city. Business owners now are hoping for a quick recovery as hundreds of thousands of worshippers flock to the region this week. Business is the same as before and even better, 30-year-old Makhlafi told AFP. 1 million people, including 850,000 pilgrims traveling from abroad, will be allowed at this year's Hajj. Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, which all able-bodied Muslims with the means are required to perform at least once in their lifetime. The sound of Quranic recitation is missing at an Islamic boarding school in a neighborhood on the outskirts of the Indonesian city of Yogyakarta. That's because this religious school is for deaf children. Students here gesture rapidly with their hands, learning to recite the Quran in Arabic Sign Language. Islamic boarding schools are integral to life in the world's largest Muslim majority country. About 4 million students live in over 27,000 residential institutes nationwide, according to the Religious Affairs Ministry. This Islamic boarding school is amongst a handful that offers religious education for deaf students. It hosts 115 deaf boys and girls who seek to become Hafiz, those who have memorized the Quran by heart. At least 18 people were killed and 243 others injured in protests in Uzbekistan's autonomous region of Karakalpakstan on July 1st and 2nd, prosecutors said on Monday. Uzbekistan's General Prosecutor's Office said that the protests began in Nukus, the capital of Karakalpakstan, over proposed constitutional changes. Those changes would affect the region's autonomous status. The prosecutor's office said protesters tried to storm government buildings. Roughly 94 of the injured were hospitalized and several were in serious condition. Authorities detained 516 people in connection with the incidents, officials said. On Saturday, Uzbekistan announced a month-long state of emergency in Karakalpakstan in presidential decree. Ethiopian Prime Minister and Sudan's leader on Tuesday agreed to calm tensions between both nations and resolve outstanding issues through talks. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Sudan's Abdel Fattah al-Burhan met at the sidelines of a regional conference in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Abiy tweeted the leaders made a commitment to dialogue and peaceful resolution of outstanding issues. The meeting comes amid heightened tensions between two countries after armed clashes over the disputed Al-Faksha territory along the border. Bosnia-Herzegovina will bid farewell to 50 more identified victims of the Srebrenica genocide on the 27th anniversary of Europe's worst genocide since World War II. More than 8,000 Bosniak Muslim men and boys were killed in the 1995 genocide during the Bosnian War. Every year on July 11, newly identified victims of the genocide are buried in a memorial cemetery in Potokari, eastern Bosnia. Thousands of visitors from various countries attend the funeral services and burials. After this year's funeral, the number of burials in the cemetery will rise to 6,721. Meanwhile, the Memorial Center in Srebrenica announced the remains of 90 victims whose bones were found but could not be identified will be preserved there. Acclaimed artists will protest China's policies against the Uyghur community on the 13th anniversary of the Urumqi massacre Wednesday. Roughly 1,000 Muslim Uyghurs were killed in the massacre and 5,000 more were detained by Chinese authorities. Stand for Uyghurs campaign is coming together with numerous rights groups to commemorate the anniversary. The campaign will host a paint an image of China's genocide against Uyghur Muslim live art protest Wednesday outside the Chinese embassy in central London. Artist Shams will paint a large canvas live to highlight China's religious suppression, state surveillance, concentration camps, and other abuses against ethnic minorities. Kabi Lame, a 22-year-old Senegalese YouTuber and TikTok star, is a devout practicing Muslim and a Hafiz al-Quran. Lame recently spoke about his faith during a Q&A session. His silent comedy clips on TikTok have garnered more than 2.3 billion likes. Lame recently was crowned the most followed creator on TikTok, dethroning American dancer Carly D'Amelio. He's known for his comic duet and stitch features and true life hacks. Lame's social media account is the fastest growing on TikTok, recently hitting 145 million on the Chinese app. The social media sensation lost his job amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour, walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes.
Mr. Speaker, if I decide to wear a turban, or you decide to wear a cross, or he decides to wear a kippah or a skull cap, or she decides to wear a hijab or a burqa, does that mean that it is open season for right honourable members of this House to make derogatory and divisive remarks about our appearance? For those of us who from a young age have had to endure and face up to being called names such as Towelhead or Taliban or coming from Bongo land, we can appreciate full well the hurt and pain felt by already vulnerable Muslim women when they are described as looking like bank robbers and letterboxes. So rather than hide behind sham and whitewash investigations, when will the Prime Minister finally apologise for his derogatory and racist remarks which... Racist remarks, Mr. Speaker, which have led to a spike in hate crime. And given the increasing prevalence of such incidents within his party, when will the Prime Minister finally order an inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party, something which he and his Chancellor promised on national television?
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back. Yesterday was the anniversary of the Urumqi massacre. To discuss this and more, we have with us Justice for All's Save Uyghur Campaign's team lead, Serwi Huseyin. Serwi is a poet and an activist and an educator. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Serwi.
Thank you, Hena, for inviting me to this program.
Serwi, please take us back to the time that this massacre took place. Recently, you wrote a piece on your memories of that time. I'd like to share that with the world.
Yes, July 5th, 2009 is an unforgettable day for me and a lot of Uyghurs who lived in the Urumqi during that period of time. Actually, before the protest took place in Urumqi, the capital city of East Turkestan, 1 week ago, I got to see a video which was illegally downloaded from YouTube because we don't have access to get on YouTube in Urumqi. Yeah, my friend actually asked through proxy firewall, and she illegally downloaded that video and showed to me. So that video was so graphic, and it features the very horrific scene of Uyghurs who were beaten to death by the Chinese innerland Chinese people in a toy factory, which is called Shaoguan Toy Factory in Guangdong City, one of the innerland cities of China. So actually, these workers were forcibly migrated without their willingness by the government. And forced to work as a very cheap labor forces in that Shaoguan toy factory. But their existence disturbed the local Han Chinese people, and then as a result, they didn't tolerate their being in there. So as a result, in the midnight, they stepped into their dormitories and pulled them out, and in the courtyard of Shaoguan toy factory, they beat. Actually, on the social media account of one of the Han Chinese people who beat Uyghurs, they say 7 or just 8 of us attacked one Uyghur civilian in that toy factory, and we used iron bars, and they were bleeding in there. And this Han Chinese guy and would like to express his disagreement with the Chinese government, because later on in Chinese state media, they said that only 2 Uyghurs were killed. But this Chinese person said actually hundreds of them were dead by us in that toy factory. So, and then after I saw that video, and then the Han Chinese people videoed the scene and then put it on YouTube. And then a lot of Uyghurs who lived in innerland, or Uyghurs who got on the YouTube and the internet through by using VPN, they downloaded the video, and then as a result, it was spread to Uyghur communities in Urumqi and elsewhere, and the Uyghur students mainly. They decided to organize a protest. This is actually how this the reason of the protest.
Who covered this? Was there media who was covering the massacre? How did news spread?
Second day of the protest, when we opened the TV, it would say that it's the robbing, breaking incidents. It was instigated by the violent people who doesn't want the nation's unity, right? But actually, we heard that like civilian disguised Han Chinese police, actually they started the breaking windows and looting, that kind of incidents first to instigate Uyghurs to do the same thing too. But this is like I heard, and of course, Chinese state media, they showed 1 or 2 Han people on the next day that this bleeding nose and the bleeding face, and it just repeatedly showing those 2 Han people with bleeding face, that Uyghur people they try to kill Han Chinese and break the nation, break the nation's unity, and so on and so forth, and like it's like featured as a violent attack of the Uyghurs to the Han Chinese civilians, but actually it was a protest carried out as thousands of Uyghur students who demanded a justified answer from the government for the incident of Shaoguan toy factory, but actually. It ended with bloodshed, and of course it was featured as an act of violence, act of robbery, act of looting, act of breaking windows of the shops, and so on and so forth.
Is protesting a part of Uyghur culture? Did you, as you were growing up, see a lot of protests in that region?
So given the condition that East Turkestan, our home, is an occupied country, an occupied land, and since its occupation in 1949, the Chinese government has started the slow assimilation policy, and at the same time, any kind of resistance activity which is originated from Uyghur people, no matter they claim their land, no matter they claim their dutiful human rights, any kinds of protests and any kinds of activities were harshly cracked down by the Chinese government. And I grew up hearing such crackdown by the Chinese government. For example, the Barin Jihad, and I was at that time in the middle school, and then we heard, we saw through pictures in the museum and how harshly it was cracked down. Of course, it was featured as the Uyghur people who carried out the protest are evil people, like terrorists or separatists. Every time they feature like that, and also when I was in the college in Ulja city, the February 5th, the Ulja massacre took place. Also, all of them actually were no matter Barin and no matter Ulja massacre, they just wanted to communicate with the government their dutiful rights, but every time it ended up with bloodshed. So this Urumqi massacre, so the Uyghur students started the protest in the People's Square, in the Urumqi city around noontime in the they carried out the protest and they marched on the streets. They were walking down towards the direction of the Xinjiang University, and I happened to see the protest with my own eyes, and I saw just hundreds and thousands of Uyghur people were on the street, and then they even just several of them having the Chinese flag on their hands, and I know that the people surrounded me, they told me that they carried out the protest to tell the government, and they need an answer from the government for the Uyghur people who were beaten to death by the local Han civilians in Guangdong City in that Shaoguan toy factory. So actually, I heard that these students, before they carried out the protest, they several times wrote to the government and they requested an answer, requested justice. Since their request was unanswered, they finally decided to carry out that protest. But when I was seeing the protest nearby the Xinhua bookstore, and I saw already they were surrounded by a lot of heavily armed Chinese military forces, and mercilessly they wanted to scatter the people who were just watching on the curb of the road, and they wanted to scatter the people with baton, with force. And I saw that several women fell down by the beating, and then I decided to leave from the scene. Later on the day, and I learned that my nephew was arrested, and he happened to be in People's Square during the protests, and we were devastated. And also later, we heard, of course, on that day, it's impossible to hear anything, but later we heard that thousands of students were pushed to the horse racing field. This is like meat market, very big meat market in the Urumqi city, which was near to the Xinjiang University. And they were pushed to the streets of the horse racing field and another 2 different directions, and they were shot to death. And the neighborhood people got to see that death scene with their own eyes.
This is fascinating. This is an inside view and a look into Urumqi massacre from someone who witnessed it and lived there. That we're done with our time, Serwi, but thank you so much for that insight and for showing us a glimpse of the horror that that community faced, and the people continue the genocide that the people are continuing to face after that. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.